Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Cybersecurity, my friends. Scary, scary, scary landscape. Holy smokes. Building a business. Also, scary, scary, scary landscape. Selling your business. Equally scary. Oh, this is going to be a scary episode. Please welcome my very special guest, Mr. Jay Smith.
Thank you for having us, David. It's not even October, and you're already starting to preach how scary the time frame is around what we're going to be talking about.
You have done some scary, brave things. So my first question is, tell us a little bit just of the Jay Smith backstory. What was it that brought you into the work that you're doing, and what were some interesting pit stops along the way?
So I think I'd always had the thought that I'd be an entrepreneur at some point in time, and my story really gets started a little bit late. I took entrepreneurship, types of college courses because I was curious about it. And then I got chicken, had a family was looking really at the corporate salary and trying to justify that versus starting your own business. And it took me a little while to get going, later 30s. And then, finally got the gumption with some partners, and we started coming out and branded ourselves as a managed security services provider. And at that point in time, there was some differentiations between managed security and managed security service providers. So we elected to go after the managed security element of it and focused on mid-market, small enterprise types of clients that needed help with security, availability, redundancy, those types of things. So trying to augment existing staffs, IT staffs.
Now, for the civilians listening, would you please just take one quick step back and explain what a managed service provider is, or MSP, that's in the IT world in a general sort of way, and then the managed security service provider, or MSSP, which specializes in IT security, cybersecurity, etc. What are some of the nuances there? Because I know some MSPs are dipping into the cybersecurity realm without specializing in it, but how would you characterize the difference?
So I think it's evolved. When we first came out, out of the gate, it was pretty easy to differentiate. We were doing higher end, security work, mostly around firewall management, multi-factor authentication, vulnerability assessments. It evolved into SASE types of things, and then network, right? Taking higher end networking things where there would be dynamic routing involved, for example. And we really saw like a network and security element, endpoint management, kind of different than what most people did in the desktop and server management space. And then as you march through more time, the line became blurrier and blurrier to a point where managed security and managed security service provider, MSSP and MSP, I don't think you can actually do it without being the same thing. And one of the things that we started to find is that there was competition from private equity that was growing organizations up, and we had a small regional doing worldwide business, but we had a small regional practice. And that became difficult to compete with when you're competing with organizations that have hundreds of people in it. So our levels of differentiation became harder and harder as time started to evolve. And the problem of security is so significant that it has started to attract a lot of competition. So, we felt as though it was, a pretty good time to get out. But, that original question that you had, differences between MSP and MSSP, from today's standpoint, I don't think you can be one without the other.
Gotcha. And then what was the year that you started your firm?
We came out of the gate probably like 02-ish. Then we rebranded in 06. We came in with some different business partners.
Yeah.
And then in 06, we started as Security 7 Networks. And we exited, we're just shy of 2 years at this point, August of 22.
Nice. So when you look back on the cybersecurity landscape, the threat landscape of 2002 or 2006? Do you look back and you go, wow, that was quaint. That was adorable. That was, we thought we were fighting the bad guys, but we haven't even met the real bad guys. How would you say that's evolved over the last 2 decades?
I think the frequency of it coming on, right? Before you had to really, from a sales perspective, and I was mostly focused on the sales element within the organization, you really had to fight for budget sometimes. You really had to prove that, security was needed as much as it was, right? Because you wouldn't get the numbers of threats as quickly. But now, every day there's a new threat, and you almost become desensitized to it, where you don't have to fight for the budget. It's not a matter of, if it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of whether it's going to happen with you or not.
Let's go back to those early days, whether you choose 2002 or 2006. And it was you, a partner, you started hiring. Tell us about the scaling journey and what were some of the obstacles and roadblocks and plateaus that you hit.
So we paid about every dumb tax that people pay. We came out and we thought that it was going to be, we came out as a salesperson and then an engineer, right? And both business minded, but the working in the business was, I was essentially focused on sales, partner-led sales, and I had a partner that was predominantly focused on, on the engineering side of it and the service operations. And we were going to be that for a long period of time and try to go with outsourcing arrangements. And as an MSSP, it's hard to do, 7x24 work and have other people on the hook, at least at that period of time, the 2006 type of time frame. So we by accident hired an employee because a business partner had folded, and we had some exposure in our customer base that, this business partner was doing work, MSP work in our customer base, and our customers kind of implored us to hire this individual and make that potential pain point go away. And we did. And then once we did that, and we kind of broke, our own first rule of not hiring any employees, we started to add, more engineering staff, a little bit more sales staff, a little bit more engineering staff, a little bit more sales staff. And it kind of evolved to a point where, when we did our transaction, we had 14 people. We ran a 7x24 shop. We were audited by the AICPA with a SOC 2 Type 2. So we had some chops for an organization of our size that we were audited. We brought third-party people in. That allowed us to play in sectors that were more compliant, like healthcare, banking, retail. Those CMMC clients, the Department of Industrial Base types of folks. So it allowed us to separate our practice out from other folks. And that's, pretty much how we scaled. A couple engineers, somebody in sales and marketing, a couple more engineers, a couple more sales and marketing. So that's how we did it.
And did you have, this is going to sound like a silly question. I mean, it sounds like almost some of this happened accidentally or demand driven, capacity driven. Did you have a vision for building a saleable asset? And we're going to build equity, and we're going to have, we're going to productize our services. We're going to have a subscription revenue model. So this is very attractive to a future buyer. Or did you just evolve based on these things? And how did that work?
No, we knew all along the way that we were coming out was going to be recurrence in our revenue model was going to be real important. So we started putting some things in place that allowed us to go off and build recurrence. So, for example, early on, we started renting hardware. And the reason that we rented hardware is you convert that from a one-time sale of the hardware to a rental. The rental's more saleable from an enterprise value perspective. So we started doing things like that. Some of our business partners, they had more of an OpEx type of model as well. So when we were going out to the market with the business partner, they were OpEx model, we were an OpEx model. So it was more nice and easy. It was gliding much easier. You didn't have to have like two different types of transaction sets for that particular client. So I think all along we knew that we were going to go off as trying to build an asset that was saleable.
And then talk about the when it was just you and the partner, and it sounds like it was just you doing the sales, right? So we always talk about escaping founder-led sales. Was that a difficult transition? Was part of your identity is, hey, I'm the rainmaker, I'm the sales guy, or was that fairly easy to hand off? And then what were some of the thoughts and the processes that you went through to make that happen?
Yeah, so the handoff, I don't think happened 100%. So when we started bringing in other people, now a 14-person company, you've got multiple hats on each individual person. So when I say that we brought in, sales and marketing, well, it was sales and some billing, and then it was client success and some sales, and it was, this and that. So it wasn't like there was, even myself is the chief rainmaker. It was not that it was just sales. I had a finance responsibility as well, primary responsibility. So it was never really handed off. But I think one of the tricks that we were really able to leverage was that of partners. So as much as I would consider this still a partner-led sales organization, we had some very significant big brother partners. And one of the things that we really did is we were able to exploit is kind of a negative connotation, but we were able to exploit the things in their model where they had a deal problem, a managed service firewall need, let's say, that they did not do, and it would get in the way of them selling their services. So we would come up with some sets of service that appealed to them. So what that did is it took that partner-led sales model, but it really extended that into a partner community where we had lots of sellers selling for us on a very part-time basis, but there were a lot of them. So when they found that deal problem that we could fix, our phone would ring. So it kind of made it a rinse and repeat model. And from a scale perspective, that really helped us, right? If you're going out to market and you're selling the same things over and over and over again, well, it's easy to train, it's easy to hire for. You've got, service attachments that are all lined up for it. You've got T's and C's. Everything is kind of in line, your marketing materials. So that part of the business helped transition very, very easily because it was, kind of tip to tail, cash to quote. We were all pretty much in line on how to do those things that, the partners would help find opportunity for us.
Do you love selling? I know, me too. Do you hate selling? I know, me too. Listen, fantastic sales book you got to get your hands on. How do I know? It's mine. That's how. Do It Selling is now available for sale. Grab your copy, grab all the bonuses, all the companion tools, all the training, all the videos that go with it at doitselling.com. See you over there. Now, talk a little bit more about this, because this is one of many fascinating aspects of your story, this partner network or this ecosystem where you are plugged in to other folks that have access and that maybe even have your prospects as their current clients. Did you seek them out? Did they seek you out? Did you meet at conferences? Were you just networking in a certain associations or affiliation groups? How did you develop this vast partner network?
So I wouldn't say that it was vast. I would say it was 2 or 3 partners that were significant in size. So, with many people that go out in a boutique type of business, they probably earn their chops at preceding jobs, right? And you make friends. And those friends go to other places. Yeah. And from my perspective, I always tried to stay in touch with those people because they were my friends. So I don't cast people off too quickly, right? I hold on loosely. And what ended up happening is they started going to places where they had deal problems, and they knew, and they trusted me, initially. And then it became, not just my trust, but an organizational trust, because it has to scale beyond just the founder. But, we started to evolve together so that we created, kind of on purpose, something that was good for them and something that was good for us. So we listened, and I think, any good entrepreneur was going to listen to what the prospects are saying or what the clients are saying. And, we did that both from our installed base, but we did it with this partner community really, really well. And after it evolved to a point, we were transacting, the phone was ringing plenty. You would walk into their offices, any member of the team would walk in the offices, and you'd be talking about the initial thing that you'd want to be talking about, but invariably there'd be two or three other new things that they would want to talk about because, you'd be walking by somebody's cube like, hey, I'm meaning to talk to you. So it became this, for a good period of time, this feeding frenzy, really built upon trust and competence. So we had a very, very small team, but a highly, highly competent team. And, you're only as good as your last job that you went into the market with, right? So if you're going to do a poor job, you're going to cut off a whole revenue channel, pretty quickly. So it was always very, we found a lot of responsibility to do a good job with every single transaction to be able to handle it the right way so that our partner would succeed. And if they're successful, we're going to share in that success. So to me, it was really basic. It is kind of old school and very, very basic. But it was very, very, very effective. And it didn't cost us a lot because we didn't have to pay for it. Our partner was getting paid by, their W-2, by their own paycheck, but we were just making their deal happen faster and better. And they recognized that, and we would be rewarded with more deals because they were sharing in that success through their own payroll.
I want to point out this evolution. So from 2006, where it was basically like buying insurance, right? Like, hey, we hope nothing bad happens, and this is overhead, and it's kind of optional in 2006. Now, like you say, hey, this is a deal blocker, right? This is if we don't put some sort of IT security infrastructure in place around this deal, that deal's not going to happen. Similarly, now there are small business supplier programs. Like you look at all the big giant corporations, whether it's Walmart or big banks or Microsoft, they now have cybersecurity compliance requirements for everyone that plugs into their ecosystem. Again, making this not optional, not insurance, but mandatory to doing business. Talk about that evolution of nice to have insurance policy, 2006, have to have basic requirement of doing business in 2024. How has that changed the dynamic of what MSSPs are up against in the sales process?
Yeah, so I think you hit it, pretty good there. So initially, our client was, had a few different types of personas to them, right? Or we would look for certain markets. There was a business need to be always up, but they didn't have the personnel, right? So I think as a service provider, we can play the personnel game one of two ways. In a down market, people are firing the extra people that they have, and they want to get a part-time resource to save some money. So a service provider will sometimes fit that requirement. The contrast to that is in an up market, and I would say that security is kind of been in this space for a long time, is you can't find the personnel, right? Right now in security, there's millions of unsatisfied jobs. So by virtue of us having some, and you don't have them, and you have a requirement, to better protect yourself, that's where a service provider is going to be rewarded, right? And as a boutique, when you are flexible and dynamic, where you can get the service differentiation better against some of the bigger people. So some of the large telcos, do what we do, and what they can really do great, I think, is what I've coined kind of vanilla at scale, right? Like they can serve up vanilla ice cream like nobody's business. But as soon as you want it just a little bit different from what their service offering looks like, and many people have an individual requirement, it starts to break their model, right? Because they want to standardize the model to, the biggest group of people that they have so that they can plug in and scale really well. That was not always our customer. Now, we could compete with that type of client, but that was not the client that we really relished when it got a little bit different from what, the folks could do at scale. But, you hit on another great one with supply chain, right? So, we've got plenty of clients that are small, right? They're, 40, 50 people, but their clients are huge, right? Walmart was one that you mentioned. We had a client that was a supplier into Walmart, and the penalties that they would enjoy for downtime would be significant. So we could start to come in and use high availability. right? And when you start to put twos of things in place, 2 internet circuits or 2 switches or 2 firewalls, it starts to get to a level of complexity where the average IT person isn't really going to be, well schooled in that. And there's a muscle memory kind of component, right? So if you could actually install it once and you're going to set and forget it, well, it might be 2 years before it breaks. Well, now when it breaks, you have not been doing that for 2 years.
Right.
And you obviously the business recognizes that there's a pain point that they're going to enjoy if there's downtime, and now you're in a down situation. So people that have felt downtime for us, that's a good client, right? If they've only got one of somebody, if they get hit by a bus, the proverbial saying. So if things like that happen, that's the type of client that we would really focus on. So it's not usually the small market client. It's usually that mid-market client, small enterprise, where they recognize pain, loss of money, associated with downtime. Yeah. And that could be cyber downtime, from a security perspective, or it could have been network downtime. Sometimes they're, 2 different sides of the same coin, like a denial of service attack that focuses on availability, but that's usually a security element. But it's because there's so much information coming down the pipe that's not warranted. So
right.
So we had a way to kind of pick out our client, that ideal client profile that everybody looks at. We knew what that poster child looked like for our client. And sometimes it was so clear, we had told them that, we know we're going to be doing business together because this is what you are. And we would actually start to say what some of their pain points are before they articulated it to us, because we were so keen on what that looked like. And they're like, yeah, we hadn't even said it yet. And you're kind of hitting it right on the button. So,
right. Yeah. Well, you touched on something else that I'm really curious about, and especially if I'm channeling our listeners who might not understand the scope and scale of the investment. So could you just, broad brush, what's the difference between an MSP or MSSP that would be charging a small company perhaps hundreds of dollars a month, and what's included at that level, thousands of dollars a month, and what's included at that level, and then tens of thousands of dollars a month? What kind of services are included at that level?
So it brings on a place where, one of the comments you made at the outset is like, where did you get some lessons learned? And, knowing that we identified as an MSSP, it really allowed us to focus our product line in certain places. Certainly things that we weren't going to do. So we weren't going to manage desktops, for example, or servers. Now we would manage the endpoint protection, the security element of that, but we wouldn't do patch management. But when you look at what, an MSP charges, that type of client, sometimes, that 20-person shop, they're going to be paying, $200 per desktop. They're not going to have an IT person on staff, some numbers of dollars per desktop. The thing that would happen is that client wouldn't really have an appeal to us because they've only got one firewall, right? They got a single location. We're going to charge, $300 or $400 for that account. So in order for us to make money, we would look for distributed enterprise, right? So instead of just one firewall, they might have 100 offices instead. So now we've got 100 firewalls to manage. So that client to us looked a lot better. So we didn't get all of the wallet, like all of the IT spend for a company of, with 100 different locations. But usually we would be partnering with their internal IT staff where they might have, 2,000 desktops. We wouldn't be doing that work. But a typical MSP wouldn't be going after that type of client in the olden days.
Yeah.
Now that's something that's more of an appeal to maybe outsource parts of that. And that was really there were many different allures of having a transaction, but knowing that we didn't focus on that part of the product line, right? That was just not something that we did. Joining a company that did do that, we would now allow that deal to really grow up, because not only will we be getting the 100 firewalls, but now we could maybe get the 2,000 desktops, right? Yeah. And now it's a complete outsourced, and now that's significant money. So we would never be able to entertain doing that as a small regional MSSP trying to go handle all those desktops. Just couldn't do it.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. So it sounds like you were really not in the hundreds of dollars a month business. Like that wasn't a target. So it was at least thousands, 10,000, 15K, 20K a month, that ballpark. What was kind of the average deal?
You know what? Average deal. I mean, we had people that had spends up in the $20,000, $30,000 range, and we had some that were in the hundreds of dollars range. But the hundreds of dollars range was sometimes the benefit to the partner. Right, the partner comes in with, and again, we were partner driven, so they had something that they wanted to do in that client. So we would take that business. It wasn't something that we really marketed, but we would take that business, and it was not a significant investment. It was easy. It's the difference between rabbits and elephants, right? That we had spoken about beforehand. We weren't really as much in the rabbit business that we would look for. We would really look for, baby elephants, maybe not huge elephants, but baby elephants.
Right. Absolutely. And then talk a little bit about what was the courting process. And again, we can keep this very broad, very big picture. But so did the acquirer seek you out, or were you sort of shopping around through a broker?
With this time, we went out with a broker. We had 2 previous unsolicited offers that didn't result in a transaction. And we got a lot of lessons learned. And from offer number 1 to offer number 2, it increased. And from offer number 2 to offer number 3, it increased pretty good as well. But we got more serious and hired an investment banker on the 3rd time. And we were ready to go. There were macro types of things going on in the space. The MSP, MSSP space, there's a lot of roll-up going on. There's a lot of platforms being built. Folks are getting scarce. Like a lot of the early people have already transacted. Resources are getting scarce for new that hit a certain type of EBITDA amount. But yeah, we hired an investment banker that was in industry, and they were a godsend. I don't think we would have transacted without hiring the right investment banker, and these guys were great.
So tell me about the lessons learned from offer 1 and offer 2. What were some of the fortune cookie sound bites that you would pass on to another founder?
Stop building your data room. So that was one, right? I think, when you're running fast, you're not as organized as you should be. And we started to get much more organized after offer 1. We got really organized after offer 2. At least we thought we were really organized. And then when we got a professional to come in, the investment banker, they helped get us even more organized. But, creating your own virtual data room where you have every document that you've ever signed, tax returns, LLC operating agreements, plans, board of director meetings, every client-facing contract, every vendor-facing contract, whether there's stipulation or any teeth in any one of those. I think knowing that we always wanted to transact, we started to have things like assignable contracts to clients. So, if there was a majority share of the organization that had sold, there was no written permission necessary. So we started to look at things like that, early termination penalties within our contracts to make sure we were going to de-risk the deal as much as we possibly could for, the buyer. I think, in hindsight, it would have been, it was great that we focused as an MSSP, and that was important to the buyer. But I think we probably limited the amount of EBITDA that we had, and had we gone off and acquired, and if we understood the trend sooner, we were getting older, as a management team, and some of the associated things that come with getting older. But we would have probably done ourselves a favor if we had gone off and acquired, and there was probably a whole bunch of other things, that were not positive that would have come with that, integration efforts and I'm looking at it as a hindsight, like, hey, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But we still had a great transaction, and very, very happy with what we did. But right now in the MSSP space, EBIT is the name of the game.
Yes, for sure.
We did everything organically. right?
Yeah.
Like that, we didn't have anything through outside acquisition, and everything we did was bootstrapped. We literally started with $100
Yeah.
and a bag of contacts and a bag of knowledge, and hit the market.
Were you tempted at some point along the way to acquire some other firm, or was it just shiny object syndrome, or wouldn't it be cool? How serious were you when you were looking at that option?
You know what? Not very. We were so busy working day to day. Day to day and night to night. Sometimes you're very busy as an entrepreneur, and you have you've got a plenty of road in front of you that you can go and collect shiny objects in front of you. But we built a great firm. We employed 14 people. We had best in class EBITDA margins. We had best in class revenue run rate. Real proud of what we accomplished. And you get involved in like the psychology of money and the emotion around money, a little bit more. And I think this was something that we had toyed with a little bit, but the investment banker said, "Geez, it would be great if." And she filled in the blank where if you had the revenue or the EBITDA that you had plus 50%, like that, because the multiples that are involved are so significant. $1 can turn into a whole pile of dollars. Yeah. You get another few $100,000 or another $1 million worth of EBITDA. That becomes real money.
Yeah. Well, but look at where you are now. You're healthy, you're wealthy, and you got time to play with the grandkids.
Right. I'm glad you didn't say wise, because I don't know if I learned all that much after the transaction.
Oh my goodness. Well, Jay, tell me what's next. What's next for you? What does the horizon look like? What are you looking forward to? What's exciting in the crystal ball?
Well, that grandkid thing that you mentioned is actually accurate. I think you sucked that in from a previous conversation. So yeah, I am spending a little bit extra time with a grandchild for sure. And we've got non-competes on us, so we have to make sure that I play within bounds. I'm trying to help other folks out at the same time. So we're in a collective 54 peer group about boutique professional services organizations, and you learn a lot going through a transaction. And there's like the people that have done it, and then the people that want to do it. Typically, at least what I've seen in our peer group, and you get a lot, right? I have a style of a transaction with the way that it went, but I gained a pile of knowledge in both the peer group, the two previous ones that were unsuccessful, and then one that was successful. So I can kind of contrast what was successful and what was not successful. So, mentoring some, other folks that are looking to either transact or build, sales in a certain, way. I'm trying to help out. So, and sometimes it's nice to just be, right? Like I don't have to have a plan, and I don't have, a significant strong plan. I am still working for Integris, which is the organization that acquired us, on a contractor part-time basis. And that's been good. It's allowed me to, kind of transition a little bit easier. And I still, at the end of the day, I've always identified as a bag-carrying salesperson. And I enjoy that process of developing trust with somebody, becoming, a friend of theirs, and, taking money for good value. And, and that's fun. So regardless of where I do, I think I'll be, client facing, doing something and trying to transact money and providing a good service.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Such a great bunch of lessons there, that friends do business with friends, and genuine relationships can be some of the best drivers of business success.
Yeah. You get that whisper, right? You get that whisper, and you get that break because you deserve it, right? Like you delivered that part, on the weekend, or you did them a solid when they really needed a solid. You helped them find a job, right? Like that client for life kind of thing is, and you're beholden to do a good job every time. That conversation we had around partners holds true, right? You're beholden to do a good job every single time out, because they're your friends and your partners.
Yes. What a great lesson. Holy smokes. Well, Jay Smith, I know people listening are going to want to get connected and stay connected in some way, shape, or form. How would you like people to reach out to you? Website, LinkedIn? Where can we send people to learn more about your empire?
Yeah, my empire, huh? You're funny. They can either get me at jay.smith@integrisit.com. That's my email address with Integris, or they can find me on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. And Both of those links will be in the show notes directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Jay Smith, thank you so much for all the value bombs, all the wisdom. This is an episode that folks will want to go back, re-listen, grab a pen, grab a pad, grab a notebook, just gem after gem after gem of insights and wisdom. So thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, David.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.